here's the big issue. The president doesn't want to have to be confronted with priorities and spending because he has a lot of chutzpah. He spent $1 trillion on the stimulus. It failed.
He's a producer, marketing strategist, and Huffington Post contributor, here to tell us about all things British, Mr. Martin Lewis. There he is. Oh, you're looking very svelte, Martin Lewis.
I lost a few pounds.
Martin Lewis is here. Now, Martin, you are really British, aren't you? You're not faking just to get a shot on this show, are you?
Yeah, I'm actually from Syracuse. It's just a fake accent. I know it works well.
Because the British have been so much in the news lately. I mean, there's the royal wedding, and there's Harry Potter, and there's this Rupert. The British have actually produced more news than I can consume. So that's why I have you here to tell me. And I read your article in the Huffington Post about the Murdoch thing. It was the best thing I have read yet on that subject. Now, I only read Us Magazine and the Crossword Puzzle and TV Guide. But no, it really was very good. And one of the things I learned from that was that Rupert Murdoch, I knew he was Australian. I didn't know that the British hated the Australians.
Well, we've had a sort of rather interesting relationship with them. Ultimately, the people in Australia, it was a penal colony. I mean, we basically sent our pickpockets and our sheepshaggers there in the 17th century, and and now they come back in the form of the Bee Gees and Rupert Murdoch.
The British think of the Australians as like Hicks, right? It would be like someone from Alabama coming to New York.
Well, like Alabama, but without the cultural sophistication.
Right, they really don't like them, do they?
Yeah. Now, Australia's a lot better now, but the Australia that Rupert Murdoch was reared in the 30s and 40s really was very backwards and was not an enlightened place. And he got a chip on his shoulder about England.
Yeah.
He got a lot of money from his dad, who was an industrious newspaper man, and then he saved up that money and went to England and decided he was going to conquer there.
And the other thing I learned from reading you that I thought was really interesting is that, I mean, some of the Murdoch family may actually pay legally for this, but your point was that what they did really wasn't illegal. It's just that it was so sleazy, nobody ever thought to do it before. Things like putting tits on page 3 of a newspaper, which if you turn to a British tabloid, there's bare-breasted women. This has gone on for decades. Or Fox News, having a completely biased news station. These are things nobody ever, hacking phones. These are things nobody ever thought to do.
You have to give him credit for what Michele Bachmann would call Chutzpah. I mean, he basically...
What did you say?
Chutzpah.
Chutzpah.
Chutzpah. I was Michele Bachmann.
You are British, aren't you?
But I'm British, I'm British and Jewish. It's two of those minorities.
If you were Jewish, you wouldn't say Chutzpah.
I was trying to mimic Michele Bachmann. Never mind.
Oh, I see.
So the
British humor, it's so hard to get.
Awful. It's dreadful. Anyway, there we were with the whole thing was that yes, he just simply had the nerve to do what it wasn't. There was nowhere in the rule book that it said you can't put naked women or semi-naked women in a family newspaper. This is something that is seen by the family, and it simply became part of the British culture. And he did the same thing, of course, with Fox News, because it didn't say anywhere in the rule book that you have to be politically nuanced and in the centre. He said, hey, why do I have to obey rules that's not written down?
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because, a lot of people have always asked that question. It was put in the title of a book, What's the Matter with Kansas? Which was the question, why do people who are not doing terribly well economically vote against their own economic interests? We see it in this country. They vote, teabaggers. They're not doing well. They vote for the interests of the million. And the answer is Rupert Murdoch and that kind of stuff. He understood the newspapers themselves don't make a lot of money. But if you can constantly put that poison in the minds of the common man that they're voting against unions, teachers, progressive people, immigrants, minorities, gay people, always create some bogeyman so the bad guy isn't the rich corporations who are really fucking them. Isn't that his genius, his evil genius?
That's very much what he did in the 1970s, and he did it very subtly. It wasn't suddenly with a big leap forward into this political agenda. What he would do was he appealed to the British equivalent of Archie Bunker, what we call the Reagan Democrats or the Nixon hard hats. And to those he basically said, hey, here's a nice pair of knockers. Oh, union's bad. Here's a pair of tits. Gay people are perverts. And if you do that for 10 years... If you do that for 10 years, eventually it drips in. And then the result was Margaret Thatcher.
Right. Yeah, I've heard people say, you know, Rupert Murdoch doesn't really have any ideology. He's just greedy. Greedy is an ideology, right? I mean, if you're a greedy person, you want to be anti-union. You want low taxes. You want no regulation. Well, that is an ideological agenda at the end of the day, is it not?
It is, in a way, but I have arguments with my liberal friends about this. I say that Rupert Murdoch really is not ideologically of the right. Yes, sure, he leans right, but he has consorted and supported left-of-centre politicians in Britain and in Australia, fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. What he does is his ideology is money, power, influence, in order to get more money, power, influence. Right. And there was a great American satirist, Tom Lehrer, who once did...
I remember,
wonderful.
Yes.
And he did a song about Wernher von Braun, who was a Nazi rocket scientist who suddenly was an American rocket scientist.
Right, after the war, we hired him for our rocket program.
And Tom Lehrer summed him up perfectly. A man whose allegiance is ruled by expedience. That is Rupert Murdoch.
Once the rockets go up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, said Wernher von Braun.
You know you're
all right, yes. Oh. Well, I've just broken into song with the British men. I guess I shouldn't do any more gay jokes tonight. All right, so let me ask you a couple of other British questions. The royal couple, what's with them? I mean, they seem like a nice young pair.
It's catnip to the American media. I think ultimately...
Isn't it? Boy, they love that shit.
Listen, I think you Americans are suffering from what we call winner's remorse. I mean, you kicked our butt in 1776, but you've been regretting it ever since. You're missing the class. Here they come along, the real housewife of Buckingham Palace, and it just looks entertaining. What else? I mean, because, you know, ultimately, what is the royal family but some people whose ancestors were better at kicking ass than my parents, you know, and their ancestors? It's just about entitlement from, you know, 300-400 years.
That couple, they have given up so much. You know, they said we're not going to have servants and we're going to live like regular people. Shouldn't they give up, don't you think, just being called Your Royal Highness? I mean, I brought this up. It just sticks in my craw that any human being in the 21st century would make another person say, Your Royal Highness.
Yes, there is that. But,
see if you can talk to them about that. You British all know each other, don't you?
Yeah, we do, but the advantage is that as an American, if you're British, you have to bow. As an American, you would not have to bow or curtsy, Bill. You could just call them Your Royal Highness.
I bow to no. Martin Lewis, thank you very much for catching us up on the British. All right, good job.